So it's a beautiful July's afternoon, and as you can see, it's typical of the great British summertime. It's cold, it's windy, it's wet, and it's raining. And these are the perfect conditions to get your deer management area ready for winter stalking. So I share this area of ground with two very good friends of mine, Steve Wild and Keith Watson. Now Steve, as you know, is my hunting partner. We go all over the world together, shooting big game, pheasants, partridge, whatever it might be. And Keith Watson is the famous Keith Watson from K&A Services, manufacturer and distributor of the UK's best high seats and shooting related products. So that's one of his high seats, his ladder stands there behind me, and we use all of Keith's infrastructure here on our ground. Now, the best thing about the summer, it's all fully grown. So if you can see things now, you'll be able to see them during the winter, of course. During the winter, all of this would have died back, but it's a perfect time to get infrastructure in and out of the woodland and carry out any essential maintenance. We use three different types of infrastructure here on our ground. One is the ladder stand, as you can see behind me. The other is a Thetford stand or an elevated box stand. Then we also use ground blinds, and I'll be showing you one of each of those examples as we go throughout this film. Now, the critical thing really is to do your reconnaissance now. Because the undergrowth is pretty high, you'll be able to see the tracks and trails that the deer have cut through the woodlands, and they're still going to be the tracks and trails that they will want to use during the winter. So what Keith has done here is got a work party together of all his friends who have come in and put a huge shift in to clear out the undergrowth, to chop down trees, and to get these new high seats in place, and they've done an amazing job. So stretching out from that ladder stand is a 100-metre long ride that's been cut into the forest. There are plenty of deer lanes that have been cut crisscrossing across the ride. So what Keith has done is he's put feeders down and game cameras so that he can try and spot the type, size, age and general condition of the animals that we've got in the forest here. That's essential for our management. We want to be taking out the right animals, either very young, very old, and making sure the balance is there. Now, of course, with dense woodland this thick, it's very difficult to see what animals you have because the undergrowth is above their back most of the year. It's not really until the winter that you know exactly what animals you have here. So using game cameras and drawing them into beans, feed, or salt licks is a great way of concentrating their movement and getting them on camera so you know what you've got there. So we'll take a quick walk down the ride and I'll show you some of the tricks that Keith has used to get that information on film. So as you can see here, we're about 45-50 yards away from the high seat, so there's plenty of space in between us and the disturbance that's been created by bringing those trees down. Keith put a mineral lick out here and then some beans. This ride won't be fed typically during the winter because we have feed bins out on the ride further into the forest. So this is mainly a crossing point. So what we're going to try and do is sit in the high seat a little bit further up there and shoot deer on the way to the feed, not while they're feeding. So what he's done is he's set up a camera which is about 7 or 8 yards away from this mineral lick, and as the deer come in, we can get some really good high-resolution pictures from the Bushnell trail cams, and we'll know exactly what we've got in this forest. Typically a muntjac will be territorial, they'll hang in the same area, so hopefully we'll start to see the same animals several times. We can identify exactly what we've got in here. The key thing really is keep coming back, checking the licks, getting some more beans down and checking the trail cameras. You can leave it for a particular period of time, and if the deer aren't using a particular trail, then of course you're going to get lots of pictures of magpies and pigeons eating the beans rather than the deer that are in your forest. But he's picked a pretty good route here. It's not particularly well worn, but with this mineral lick here, then hopefully that should bring the deer in. So this is one station and there's a couple more further down. So we're now around 95 yards from the high seat, so this is kind of the furthest we'd expect to be shooting. Now, the reason that Keith's put the camera down here is because there's a very clearly defined deer trail that runs straight in front of it. So there's no mineral lick here, but there's still plenty of beans. So this is a route that the deer will use to get to and from their normal feeding areas. It's unlikely we're going to see them on the beans at this time of year. There's plenty of foraging here. There's plenty of luscious growth, new green shoots all over the place. So there's plenty of places to keep them elsewhere. But once again, you've got to put that work in. You've got to put that reconnaissance in. And even just a glimpse of a deer will allow you to pick up a picture of the population and also start to pick out those ones that later on during the season are going to form the priority in your cull list. So now we've seen how the ride is laid out in front of us. Now it comes to the infrastructure. K&A Services built all of our high seats and all of our box stands, and this is their ladder stand. Incredibly well engineered, solid steel, weatherproof through this galvanized coating, incredible workmanship, and you won't mind me saying that. Typically what you use them for is when we've got somewhere like here, a good solid tree base looking out over a ride, something that gives you at least 180 degrees worth of vision. Occasionally you can get to a crossroads within the forestry where you can see both ways, and that's where these can be really useful. Now they are exposed, which means that movement has to be down to a minimum. We'll probably end up doing is putting some camouflage netting around that, just to mean that you can move your hands and your legs if things are cold. And now all the way around this one, Keith has also fit plumber's pipe lagging to make sure that your barrel and your stock don't get damaged by the steel frames. Now they're fitted and attached to this tree by cargo straps, so nice and secure, and there's this bracing point here that goes right into the tree and fixes it solid. Now you do need to be careful to recognise that the trees are constantly growing. So every year you need to come and loosen off that cargo strap and then retighten it again. Do that every spring, every summer. And of course, when you come back during the winter, you may need to tighten things up again. So don't get into the ladder stand unless you first checked all your mounting points, everything's where it should be. And of course, it's still secured to the tree with a cargo strap. It's also something to look for as well, that quite a few of these ladder stands do get vandalized during the summer. We've had quite a few on the estate here that have cut the legs off. So don't just check for security against a tree, but also check for security that they haven't been vandalized, damaged or sabotaged. Now the reason we use these elevated stands here, of course we want to get ourselves and our centre as high off the ground as possible. Typically here on the estate there's mainly muntjac with a few rows, so they're quite low to the ground, but as soon as we can get in first thing in the morning, get ourselves way above ground level, then hopefully the scent will blow above the deer, not straight to them. And of course this elevated shooting position means that you always have a safe backstop. Where you have quite dense forest like here, almost always got a tree behind the animal, which is quite helpful. But when you are shooting in areas that may have footpaths going through them, or tracks or trails, or perhaps that the ground falls off behind you, the higher you can get, the more likely it is you're going to be able to get a safe shot at that deer, because of course if there's no safe backstop, you just don't take the shot. But there are other seats and different designs of seats that we use on the estate, and we'll show you a couple of those now. So here is a prime example of the traditional positioning of a ladder stand. Now this one here is a little older than the one we've just seen. I think it's about 5 years old now. See, it's still robust, it's still pretty solid, but it's covered in this patina, and it almost has its own naturally produced camouflage now with all the algae and lichen on it. So once again, this tree is perfectly positioned. It's right in the middle of these three rides here. So over my left-hand side, there's about 60, 70 yards out to the field margin. Straight in front, there's about 110 yards, and about 80 yards, there is a feed bin full of beans. And then of course, you can catch a view maybe to around 70 yards on the right-hand side. So this is where the versatility of this type of seat really comes in. Once again, for my liking, it's a little exposed. So what we'll probably do in a few weeks' time is come down, put some camouflage netting on there, put it out really early so the deer do get used to the movement, they get used to the noise. And then when you're sat up there and it's rustling around in the wind, and then they'll completely ignore it. So yeah, here's one that's been here for a little while, and so far it's been pretty productive. So here we are at my favourite seat on the estate. This magnificent creation is a Thetford seat or box stand, and is probably the best stand that Keith Watson has ever built. Now, as you can see, completely different from the ladder stands that we've seen elsewhere. Very substantial, built to be freestanding, and gives you a perfect 360-degree view of the area around you. It's also particularly good in winter, inclement conditions, driving rain, or if it's cold, because in there obviously you're sheltered from the wind and all of the elements. I think the beautiful thing about this seat is that you can come in and spend all day in there. You can bring your sandwiches, you can bring a flask, you can sit down with your mate and have a conversation, all while not disturbing the area around you. Now, quite a few of you may have gone either roebuck stalking or wild boar hunting over in Germany, and this is typically the type of stand that you'll see on a lot of the hunting areas out there. I'd say actually this is probably better built. Now of course the key thing it's been put here for really is to give us the most advantageous shooting position. Now on my left hand side, directly in front of me, and also on my right hand side, I've got feed rides for the pheasant shoot that is hosted here. So later on during the summer you'll start to see pheasant feeders appearing all the way around these rides, and of course the pheasants will be down there, but so will the muntjac. So for us it's a great way to be able to get up in the middle of a lot of these aisleways where there's going to be deer movement, make the perfect shot. Now you can see that there are trees here, but they're not in the right position. So we had considered putting a ladder stand on that tree, but it's too far back and you can't see up this ride in front. Then we thought that, but then the tree on the right hand side of that blocks the view down that ride. So this really does give us a perfect viewpoint of all the potential deer approaches. So one of the great things about this seat is you can close off some of the flaps if the wind is blowing in that way, or if clearly you've seen deer activity on one particular side. So although it is protected broadly around the side, you can also keep it nice and cozy and warm in there by shutting some of the flaps. But all in all, it's a great, well-built high seat and somewhere that you can spend an awful lot of time on a winter's evening. So the third and final type of seat that we use here on the estate is this. This is a ground blind. Now it looks very similar to the box stand that we showed you previously, and in construction it is pretty much the same. The main difference being obviously it's sitting on the ground and there is only one quite large flap at the front. Now the reason this has been used here, there's a pretty big bowl out in front of us, so the ground dips away quite dramatically and then comes up on the other side. Now I've taken quite a few deer out of this wood. It is a very productive area and there is an awful lot of movement. The deer are quite transient in here. So the seat that I have that's been most productive is on the far side of this hill, so the other side of the ridge, so you can effectively put two stalkers in here, and if one takes a deer, you can actually move the deer through into this bowl sort of area, and there's a perfectly safe backstop. Now as you can see, this has been carefully decorated by Keith. He's obviously had his arts and crafts moment out on here. It's extremely well done and you can see the care and attention that's gone into it, but in reality it's actually quite useful. And of course there's been quite a lot of work in here, taking down dead trees, breaking up undergrowth and trying to flatten things down as best we can. Of course during the winter it will all die down, but taking a lot of that dead growth and those dead trees away will give us lots of clear arcs of fire. So putting this in here, surrounding it with vegetation, leaving that nice canopy at the back there gives it a nice setting, and then hopefully once everything started to settle down, the deer will get used to it and they won't pay it any attention. Now the route into this seat is actually from behind. It's really important. Of course when you get into a box stand like this, scent is always going to be an issue, so the scent will linger around at this sort of height. So what we need to do is come in from the back, don't disturb or taint any of the ground in front of us, and try and keep the wind away from us as much as possible. Of course we want to try and have the wind facing onto us when sat in this seat. That's the optimum, but because we're sat in an enclosed space, it isn't as bad as sitting out here just say in a seat or on a bench for example. And so as you can see, a huge amount of work has gone in on the estate so far this summer to get these seats in, to clear the dead undergrowth out of the way, to get the game cameras and the feed bins out ready for culling in the winter. So there we are. It may seem to a lot of people that you just walk out into the forest, a deer steps out in front of you, you shoot it and then go home and make sausage, but there's a huge amount of work that goes into making these estates run. We have 7 separate areas of woodland, each with its own deer population, each with its own characteristics. And as you've seen, we approach each area completely differently. Understanding your land, what it needs and how best to manage those deer only comes through reconnaissance and through putting the time in on the ground. And there's also a huge amount of preparation. As you can see around us, there's been so much work that's been carried out by Keith and his work party. So you guys that helped us out, thank you so much. There's no way we could have done this without you, and you know who you are, so thanks again guys. But to really get the best out of your ground, put the work in. Get your friends around you, get some new high seats in here, and think really carefully, how are your deer going to move? Where are the areas during the winter that are going to have feed? If there's no feed there, put a bin in place. Get some game cameras out, look for the deer trails, look where your animals are moving to, and then select the right animals for the cull. So that's how we do it. We've had some measure of success over the years, but I'm sure we can get better. And I'd really appreciate to hear what you guys think. How do you manage your land? Are there any tips, tricks and hints that you can provide to us? But of course, we've got plenty more content coming your way. Hunt videos, gear, how-tos and instructionals, hints and tips. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.